We continue today with the second chapter of the book of Devarim. Yesterday, when we left off, Moshe just described a group of Jews who, after God said that this generation is not going to enter into the land of Israel because of their lack of faith, Moshe discusses a group that tried and got massacred in the process, and that's where we pick up. Today. So, Devarim Bet, Deuteronomy 2, verse 1. Vanethan vanisa hamidbara derech yamsuf kasher diber Adonai elai v'nasav et har seir yamim rabim. We marched back into the wilderness by the way of the Sea of Reeds, as God had spoken to me, and skirted the hill country of Seir for a long time. Right, so we're going back. We're not going towards Israel. We're going back away from Israel. Vayomer Adonai elai lemor, and God said to me as follows: Rav lachem sovet ahar, hazeh pnu lachem safona. You've been in the hill country. Now turn north. V'atam sav lemor atem ovrim b'gvul achechem b'nei Esav vayoshvim b'seir vayeru mikem v'nishmartem od. And tell the people you're going to be passing through your cousin's land, the descendants of Esav who are in Seir. They are going to be afraid of you. But you still need to be careful. Even though they're afraid of you, that doesn't mean that they won't try to do something to you. Oftentimes when somebody's afraid, that's when they attempt to attack first. So that's what goes on here, that Moshe is warning them, do not do anything to the descendants of Esav. And he goes on, Al titgaruvam kilo aten lachem eretzam ad midrach kaf ragel ki Yerusha le'esav natati et har seir. Don't provoke them, don't start up with them, because that is their land, that is their possession. And we know this, that God said to Avram, Av hamon goyim netaticha, you're going to be the father of many nations. Our story is about Bnei Yisrael, but there's also the Bnei Esav, and we'll see there are more families in this chapter related to Bnei Yisrael. We're told not to attack, right? Esav is our cousins, do not attack them. Obviously, in time, there's going to be Amalek, which is maybe an exception, but generally you have to figure out a way. Yes, maybe there'll be fences, so there'll be good neighbors, but you have to figure out a way. Do not attack your cousins, the descendants of Esav. When you want food, go buy food from them. If you want to drink, then go to the grocery store and pay them for it. Nevertheless, you know that God has blessed you in all your ways. God has watched over your wanderings throughout this desert, and you never lacked anything in these past 40 years. So if you want to buy from them, you can do that, but you have more than enough. And then we moved on from the territory of Esav, who lived in Seir, and we went to the territory away from Elat, Etzion Gaver. We've had those mentioned as stops of Bnei Israel, and we march in the direction of Moab. So another cousin of Bnei Israel, Moab, one of the two sons and grandsons of Lot. And what do we say about Moab? Al Tatsered Moab, very same thing. Don't start up with Moab. Al Titkarbam, don't provoke a war with them. Yerusha, this is for the descendants of Lot. Again, these are your cousins. This is not somebody who you should attack. It was formerly inhabited by great, numerous giants. Like the Anakim, again, the giants, they're counted as Rephaim. The Moabites have a different word for them. They're called Amim. And now that's who lives in that territory. And again, don't start there. Similarly, Seir was formerly inhabited by the Chorites. So now we're talking about who had formerly lived in the land of Moab. So we're going to talk about who before Esav's descendants had lived in Seir, where Esav's descendants now live. Right, the descendants of Esav dispossessed them, wiped them out, and now it sounds like a verse that maybe part of the verse was added a little later. Just as Israel did in the land they were possessed, they were to possess. Moshe seems strange. It doesn't seem right that Moshe could have told them before they went into the land of Israel that Israel had defeated their enemies and and captured the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, the same way the Bnei Esav did, and the same way the Bnei Moab did, because this is something that happens into the future, which happens to do with larger questions beyond our scope today, whether certain verses, certain phrases were added into the book of Devarim, as is often, you can look further a different day into the Ibn Ezra and others regarding these important and significant questions. So now Moshe going back into history says, now cross Zered, and we crossed Wadi Zered again. So Moshe is going back in history. The time we spent traveling from Kadesh Barnea until we crossed Nachal Zered was 38 years. Atom kol ador anshe milchama mikarav machane ka'asher nishba Adonai lahem. As the whole generation, right? I said that generation, that those people were going to die out. And that's what happened over the last 38 years. God struck them down to root out those who still had the slave mentality, those who could not be free, those who could not have enough faith to follow God into the desert. And so in verse 16, and when all the warriors had died off, all of that generation who cried about the spies, who, then their brethren went out and tried to go into Israel without God, all those people, God said, now they have all died out. Then God said to me as follows, now you're passing through the territory of Moab through Ar. V'karavta, verse 19, mul b'nei Amon al titzureim v'al titgar bam. Ki lo etain meretz b'nei Amon lecha Yerusha ki livnei lot natati Yerusha. So, right, we'd already gone through the territory of Esav. We've already gone through the territory of Moab. And we were told in the past not to start up with them. That is their territory. They are our cousins. They are our family. We talked about in the book of Breshit the tragic idea of Avram and Lot separating, of Yaakov not following Esav to his territory when Esav wanted to make up with him, and maybe things would be different today for the Jewish people. But we're told here, God is going to give us the territory, and God has given these people their territory. They're our cousins, and we should not attack them. Eretz Rephaim, verse 20. Again, it's counted as Rephaim country because it was formerly inhabited by the Rephaim. The Ammonites called them Zamzuim. Am Gadol v'Rav Ram Ka'anakim. Again, we're being told that was a great people who lived there. And God wiped them out, and the Ammonites dispossessed them and settled in their place. So just saying here, the same way God is going to help us capture the land of Israel, God helped our cousins. God helped the people of Ammon, the people of Moab, to capture their land. Similarly, as we said before, just like was done for Esav, that God helped Esav's descendant capture their land. So too with the Avim, who were in the vicinity of Gaza, right, who came from maybe Crete, it's unclear, they were wiped out and settled in their place. Those who came from Crete, so now our cousins, Ammon, Moab, Esav, can't attack them. God has provided land for them. They are from Av Hamon Gayim. They are the descendants of Avraham. They have a role to play in the future of the Jewish people and in our future civilization. However, the Amorites, one of the 7 nations, the nations that God has said Bnei Israel are going to dispossess with their king Sichon, you can go and attack him. And the day when you go and attack Sichon, which has already happened in the end of Sefer Bamidbar, again, this is Moshe recounting what has happened. That day, everybody's going to be scared of you. Everybody's going to quake in their boots because you have defeated such a formidable and strong empire led by Sichon. So first, Moshe says, I didn't just attack them, I sent out messengers to the king Sichon with an offer of peace, where I said, just let me pass through your territory. We don't really want to conquer you. We just want to go through to get to the land of Canaan. Let us pass through. If we need to eat, if we need to drink, we'll pay you for it. We're not asking you for anything. Anything that we that we want to take. If we don't have enough water, if the journey is harder than we think, we will pay you for the water. We'll pay you for the food our cattle eats, etc., etc. And we're just going to do this the same way we did this with Esav and with the Moabites. We just passed through their land. God is giving us the land. We just want the western bank of the Jordan River. We don't want to mess with you. However, but God did not allow Sichon to pass us through. God hardened his heart. It's like we're going back to Egypt, right? And it's an interesting idea, right? Generally, we believe, at least most Jewish thinkers, most believe that we all have free will. There are those Jewish, more in the mystic, the Hasidic camp, not so many, who believe that we don't really have free will, but in the Torah it appears that we have free will. But there are exceptions. Paro loses his free will. Here we have, it seems to say that Sichon loses his free will. We know that there are going to be stories with, for example, Avshalom, when he rebels against his father, King David, where people don't listen. God wants Avshalom to lose in the rebellion, and he doesn't listen to his great advisor, Achitophel. Or we have King David is going to sin. He's almost going to be sort of lured into sin by Satan. So there seems to be at times, and especially it's with monarchs, it's not with the average person, it's to make things happen sort of on the world stage where we have seemingly free will being lost. And here it's being lost by Sichon, because Sichon should have taken the peace offer. Bnei Israel were not a threat. They said, we're not going to do anything to you. But God hardens Sichon's heart because God wants Bnei Israel to capture the land of Sichon. So he doesn't give us permission to go through his land. And verse 31, God said to me, I begin, meaning the conquer of you will begin. I will begin my conquest. I will begin getting Bnei Israel territory by putting Sichon and his land at your disposal. So begin, take possession of his land. And Sichon came with all his troops to a place called Yatza to wage war. And we defeated them. God delivered Sichon and his sons, his troops, all of them to us. We captured all of his town by Etahi. We conquered all of it, and 3,000-year-old book. We didn't leave any survivor, not men, not women, not children. It's a difficult verse to read. We know we see it at times, and there's not much good to say about it. We retained his booty, only the cattle and spoils that we captured. And this was something that from the entire territory we were successful. God gave it to us. There was no complications. There were no little battles that we lost and won the war. We won everything. God delivered us. It is a foreshadowing of sort of what's going to happen in the land of Israel. Not that every battle is going to be a success, but that Bnei Israel will conquer, that they will be decisive in victory, and God will help them in their conquest. Verse 37, last verse in our chapter. Rak el eretz bnei Amon lo karaft ta ki kol yad nachal yabok v'arei ahar v'chol asher tziva Adonai Eloheinu. But we didn't encroach upon the land of the Ammonites all along the wadi and the towns and the hill country, just as God has commanded. And so here we have this chapter. We're told the details of how Bnei Israel are going to conquer, where they're going to go, where they're not allowed to go. And it's interesting to note, right? The one hand, God is saying you're going to take the land of Israel, and God is going to say there are going to be other people in addition who you're going to dispossess, but there are people who you can't. There are people, whether it be because they're descendants of Abraham, whether it be because they are your relatives, and therefore maybe you have to learn how to get along with people even who aren't of different nations. There could be different reasons as to why, but those territories were given by God to these people, and thus they deserve them. They have not sinned. They do not deserve to be dispossessed. It's not a free-for-all. It's not Bnei Israel can go and attack anybody who they want, when they want. They're only allowed when God gives them permission to try to conquer a territory that God will help them in that conquest.